London, the beating heart of the greatest empire the world has ever seen. A city of fog, industry and unbridled ambition. Today the sound of London is unmistakable. A deep grave sound that has marked the rhythm of British life for over a century and a half. The sound of Big Ben. But there was a time when the Westminster skyline was silent. A time when the world's most famous icon was nothing but mud, stone, and the audacious dream of men who wanted to tame time. This is not just the story of a tower. It is the story of an impossible challenge, of engineering, disasters, of conflicting egos, and of a construction that almost never happened. Prepare to travel back in time. Forget what you know about the postcard image. Today we are going to enter the most dangerous and fascinating construction site of the 19th century. We will witness, step by step, stone by stone, the birth of Big Ben. We are in 1843. The old Palace of Westminster was destroyed by fire years earlier, and from the ashes a new vision is emerging. But before we touch the sky, we must dive into the mud. The ground on the bank of the River Thames is treacherous. Clay, silt, and centuries of buried history. To raise a tower 96 meters high, something unprecedented for a clock. The foundation needs to be unshakable. Look at the men. Hundreds of them. Anonymous laborers with their shovels and wheelbarrows fighting against the river tide. There are no hydraulic cranes here, only brute force in the steam revolution. The rhythmic sound of pile drivers echoes across London, driving timber piles deep into the riverbed. It is dirty, dangerous, and exhausting work. Upon this unstable base, a massive concrete slab is poured. It is upon this that the clock tower, as it was called at the time, will begin to rise. The first stones arrive. Anston limestone, brought from Yorkshire. A cream-colored stone, chosen for its beauty, but which would soon prove problematic in London's acidic, coal-filled atmosphere. But for now they are perfect. Observe the precision. Each block is hoisted by wooden cranes powered by hand or steam. The square base begins to emerge from the chaos of the construction site. There are no steel bolts holding these stones. It is gravity and lime mortar that keep the dream standing. As the base reaches 3, 6, 10 meters, scaffolding begins to embrace the structure. It is a complex web of timber, rope, and knots. There are no modern safety standards here. One false step on the wood, slick with constant London rain, and the fall is fatal. The weather is unforgiving. Rain, snow, wind. Construction stops only when it is impossible to continue. In winter, men warm their frozen hands over fires and oil drums, while the cold stone waits for the next layer. It is a slow and constant battle against the elements. The years pass. 1846, 1848, 1850. The tower ceases to be a stump of stone and begins to scratch the sky. The architect Charles Barry, along with the Gothic genius Augustus Pugin, designed something that was not just functional but spiritually imposing. The tower does not rise smoothly, it is dressed in intricate details. Look at the details at 30-40 meters high. Long narrow windows, royal coats of arms, the symbol of the portcullis. The grid of Parliament, carved repeatedly into the stone. Pugin was driving himself mad with the details, drawing every inch, every gargoyle, every flourish. He said, "I have never worked so hard in my life, but I see the beauty rising." For the workers up there, beauty is secondary to survival. At 50 meters high, the wind from the Thames is a constant enemy. They work on narrow wooden platforms hoisting stones that weigh tons. The interior of the tower is a dark, echoing shaft, while the skin of stone rises on the outside. Inside, a spiral stone staircase is meticulously assembled, step by step, climbing towards the light. It is also here that the shaft for the clock weights is prepared, the gravitational heart that will make the machine work. At 60 meters, the tower already dominates the skyline. On foggy days, the top disappears, and the workers climb into a white, isolated world above the sooty city. On clear days they can see St. Paul's Cathedral in the distance, the only rival in height. The main structure, the shaft of the tower, is nearly ready. It is a monolith of stone and brick, a square chimney waiting for its crown. But the real challenge hasn't even begun. Building it. Tower is civil engineering. Building the world's largest clock at 90 meters high. That is madness. We arrive in 1853. The stone tower is ready. Now the construction of the clock room begins. Forget the stone for a moment. The top of the tower is a cast iron cage. Gigantic girders are hoisted, riveted, and bolted. This is where the Industrial Revolution meets Gothic architecture. The clock project was a nightmare. The Astronomer Royal demanded a precision that watchmakers of the time said was impossible. The first strike of the hour had to be accurate, to within 1 second. Edmund Beckett Denison, a lawyer and amateur horologist, accepted the challenge. He designed a revolutionary mechanism, but he needed a house worthy of it. See the dials. For gigantic iron eyes, each 7 meters in diameter. They are assembled piece by piece, suspended in the abyss. The wind howls through the empty frames. It is a spiderweb structure, strong yet delicate. Then comes the glass. Not ordinary glass but opal glass. White and milky, chosen so the dials could be backlit at night. A spectacular innovation for the Victorian era. Brave glaziers cut and fit each of the 312 pieces of glass into each dial. It is a giant puzzle made in the heavens. And the color? Today we think of Big Ben as black and gold. But originally the iron of the dials was painted Prussian blue, a deep royal blue, with details in 23-karat gold. Imagine the shine of that gold under the rare London sun, contrasting with the rich blue. It was a jewel, not just a clock. Inside, the mechanism arrives. It is a colossal machine. Bronze gears, steel shafts, all mounted on a massive iron bed. Denison invented the gravity escapement specifically for this clock, isolating the mechanism from the wind and snow that could affect the giant hands outside. But not everything goes as planned. The first hour hands made of copper were too heavy. When they tried to move them, they didn't work. A public failure. They had to be destroyed and replaced with lighter metal hands. As for the minute hand, that is a masterpiece of hollow copper, 4.2 meters long. When it jumps every 30 seconds, the sound of the mechanism echoes like a pistol shot inside the tower. The clock is ready. But a mute clock is of no use to Westminster. It needs a voice. And that voice needs to be heard throughout the city. Enter Big Ben. Not the tower but the bell. The first bell cast cracked during testing. Disaster. The second bell, cast at the Whitechapel Bell Foundry, weighed 13.5 tons. Imagine the scene on the streets of London. 16 white horses pulling a carriage with the bronze monster. The crowd cheers. It is a metal hero returning home. But how to get 13 tons to the top of a narrow tower? The bell is turned on its side and hoisted up the central shaft of the tower. It is a surgical operation of brute force. Inch by inch, it rises in the darkness, scraping the walls, groaning under the tension of the chains. Took 30 hours of absolute tension until it reached the belfry. Around it, 4 smaller bells are installed to play the Westminster melody every 15 minutes. But it is the great bell that everyone is waiting for. Above them, the final roof is being built. A steep iron pyramid covered with slate tiles and crowned with gold. It is Queen Victoria's tiara in architectural form. At the absolute peak, a special lantern is installed, the Ayrton light. It will only be lit when Parliament is in session at night, a beacon of democracy shining over the sleeping city. Finally, the test. The hammer pulls back. The bell sounds. It is a boom that makes the tower vibrate. But something is wrong. The hammer used was too heavy. A few months later, the second Big Ben also cracks. The sound changes. That slightly dissonant and raspy tone we know today? It is the sound of a broken bell. They turned the bell a quarter turn, used a lighter hammer and left the crack there. The voice of London is, in truth, a wounded voice. 1859. The work is complete. The moment of revelation has arrived. Like a curtain opening on a gigantic stage, the scaffolding begins to be dismantled. From top to bottom. First, the golden roof shines free in the sky. Then the clock dials appear, clean, white and magnificent. And finally the detailed stone shaft. London stops to look. What was a noisy construction site is now the most elegant structure in the city. The Elizabeth Tower, although everyone already calls it by the bell's name Big Ben, rises to 96 meters. But the real magic happens at dusk. For the first time in history, a public clock of this magnitude is illuminated. Gas lights are lit behind the dials. In the middle of the darkness and London fog, 4 bright moons appear suspended in the sky. It is a beacon of order in the chaos of the metropolis. Inside, the heart beats. The pendulum swings every 2 seconds. Tick, tock. Denison's mechanism works with a precision that defies belief. And then the full hour. The four smaller bells play the melody, and then momentary silence. The great hammer rises and falls. Bong. The sound rolls down the River Thames, passes through the Houses of Parliament, reaches the busy streets, enters the homes. It is the sound of stability, the sound of England. They built more than a tower. They built time itself. Through wars, bombings, kings, and queens, Big Ben would continue to mark the hours. But it all started here. With mud, stone, iron, and the unbreakable will to touch the sky. This was the construction of Big Ben.